Radio, Mike Stidham here, talking a little mixed martial arts, and our poll question for the day is, what are your thoughts on the City Weekly article? There was a City Weekly article written about yours truly, and I'd like to get your thoughts. And really, I would like to invite those of you who don't like me to call in as well. I'd love to hear your side of it. This segment is brought to you by Aztec Highway. Get it your way at the highway, WDFA. I want to welcome now to the show Stephen Dark. Now, Stephen is the author of the article. He's the one of two news reporters for City Weekly. And Stephen, first of all, is Stephen Dark your real name?
Indeed, it is.
Indeed, it is. I get right up on that microphone because they can barely hear you.
It's a good old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon name, believe it or not. Being English, I'm proud of my heritage.
Your heritage. Now, the reason I ask you that, Stephen, is that I really thought I read you. I thought I knew you, man, and then I saw the article and really wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And let me preface what I'm going to say here with, I respect you. I think you're a character guy. I think you're a stand-up guy. And I do tend to get a little animated when I speak. So if at any time I get out of control, kick me in the shin and I'll put myself back in place. And I really don't want you to feel like you're being attacked. You're a very good sport for coming in here today. But as we said before, I was kind of a good sport about answering some questions to you as well. So I want to ask you a couple of questions here. I felt there was a story here that never got told. In fact, when we first spoke with you, we talked about the Athletic Commission being wrought with shady Utah politics, the way it was formed, the way they operate. And I felt like there were mountains of evidence of kind of shady backdoor dealings that completely went unreported. My question to you is why? And then secondly, at what point did you feel like that's not the story? We're going to go on to the Filet Mike Stidham story.
Well, I wouldn't say that I set out, or rather that the story fillets you. But first of all, you came to us with essentially a conspiracy that you felt that Greg Hughes had set up this commission, the new commission, correct?
Which none of that is deniable, right? They even admitted to that. No. To his bunch.
And I would ask just one, did you read, I also did like a web story on the commission, which kind of looked at, but again, it didn't go into all the depth that you went into about how you felt the commission had essentially that Greg Hughes had betrayed you because when you reached out to him over your issues with Bill Colbert, he didn't respond, or he wasn't there, and that Hughes had asked you to help him with the commission and restart it, as it were, reboot it, and you worked with that, and you felt very happy with the result. Those two emails that clearly showed that you thought this was a great thing, that the promoters in Utah were really benefiting from this. Right. And that, when I read those two emails, that's when I started to wonder. I felt that the story that you had pitched to me was... it kind of broke the whole thing for me to some degree.
Okay, all right, very, very good. Now, to kind of give some people some foundation here, Greg Hughes dismantled the old, and this is not disputed, he dismantled the old Athletic Commission. He brought it under the Governor's Office of Economic Development. He took it out of Commerce, which is where it really belongs. It's a licensing agency. Put it under GoEd, which is their whole purpose is to bring in commerce to the state. There's to bring in trade, and it really isn't a regulatory agency. And so when that happened, Greg, and the reason I don't want to really get into the reasons why he did that. I can, but it's a really long story. But when he did that, he realized that, wow, man, I've kind of exposed myself here a little bit in the sense that this commission really doesn't know what they're doing, asked me to help him with it, and I did. And for a couple of years, things went great. And when they did, I acknowledged the fact that things were going great, and I thanked Greg Hughes. Well, there was a point in time last year where I caught Bill Colbert stealing money from me. And I caught him red-handed, and I confronted him in front of several people where he admitted that he had done that. And that is when the entire relationship started to decline. And when I reached out to Greg Hughes after having written those emails and said, Greg, things have changed, I need your help here, he didn't respond. So how did those emails still make you feel like there was no... And first of all, you sat front row and watched Bill Colbert squirm and trying to pin 17 allegations on me that just didn't exist and clearly wasn't able to prove. You saw that happen. You saw Bill Colbert spitting snot out of his nose, getting all irate over the fact that I was contesting his word, and yet that wasn't compelling to you.
Well, I put that in the story that at the end about sort of the allegations basically resulted that the commissioner brought against you basically resulted in a fine that's held in abeyance. And so that you essentially, I mean, I think the story, where is the story inaccurate?
The story is inaccurate in the sense that the commission, first of all, the way it was put together, that wasn't told out because Francine Gianni didn't want to speak on the record. Neither did the ICAC guys because they didn't want to go on the record because, let's be honest, Greg Hughes has influence over where money goes in this state, over budgets, and they don't want to affect that relationship. So that story was there. And because they didn't want to go on the record, you didn't want to touch it.
Well, I disagree. I mean, I think you said earlier that it should be in the Department of Commerce. My understanding is that it shouldn't be in the Department of Commerce, or at least that people didn't want it there. Whatever the political back and forth between Hughes and Gianni over this issue, for me, the more I looked at this story, the more it became about you, because you were seen as the founding father, the godfather, whatever, of MMA in Utah, and that generated a very polarized figure. There are people who love you, there are people who hate you, and I think that story kind of adequately reflects.
Well,
that was always the story.
I don't think the people that love me got interviewed. In fact, there was one guy that says nice things about me, but he's not even part of my group, of my organization. He's a guy that's trained at Jeremy Horn's gym. He's trained at several gyms. In fact, every gym in town. He just happened to say nice things about me. None of the people that like me or and just so you painted Hank Weiss as one of the only fighters that still is loyal to Mike. How do you put on a weekly show and only have a few people that are loyal to you? There are hundreds of fighters that are loyal to me. Hundreds. And I'm gonna name off some of the gyms here that have put fighters in my show in the last year. And Mushin, Bernalis Institute, Unbroken Circle out in Vernal, Throwdown, one of the guys that sued me, or back around feeling like, hey, look, let's put that behind us. Let's move on. We're all big people here. Team Unbreakable, Fusion Academy, Tony Martinez, Bobby Lawrence, Westside Jiu-Jitsu, Mori Academy, Paul Toms, Professor Pedro Sauer, the Twill MMA group, Park City MMA group, the group in Heber. There are guys, there are a lot of, and these are top quality gyms. These are top of the food chain guys. I mean, Will Bernalis has some of the best fighters in the state, hands down. You know, so when we're talking about elite fighters, it's hard to match up elite fighters against the same elite fighter 17 times. It just loses interest. So granted, when Horn and his group left, we lost some of that, but there are still a great deal of gyms and fighters that support me. And if they don't support me, they're undeterred by some of the naysayers' efforts to try to undermine what I do. And that wasn't reflected in the story at all. None of those camps got contacted, let alone were cited. And the one guy that was cited on several occasions, I've spoken to in my lifetime one time. Rob Hanley. I don't even know who the hell Rob Hanley is. Let alone, I mean, he owns a gym, and I've spoken to him once. Yet he's the guy talking about me making dimes off fighters' backs and me.
No, he wasn't. He was only quoted once in one line where he said that something that I felt was pretty accurate, which was that you were pointing fingers at everybody, and some of those fingers were being pointed back.
Do you know how many people don't like Rob Hanley? Everybody in this room and a lot of other people.
You came to us with the story,
yeah,
and you said, here is this story. And when I looked at this story, the more I looked at it, the more that particular Handley quote sort of came back to me, that you were the story in essence.
Okay, I guess part of what we want to know is, why is Handley's quote relevant at all? I mean, where does he fit in the story? Where does he fit in with the commission? Where does he fit in with Mike? Where do his fighters fit in the show? Is he a name in Utah MMA? Why is he quoted not only in the story but in bold?
What do you mean in bold?
These are the big bold letters right there.
Big bold quote
that's
right
just
next to
a
the
pull
picture.
quote. That's nothing to do with me. I don't make those decisions.
Okay.
But again, because I felt that it kind of accurately summarized what was the sentiment that I encountered after interviewing 32 people over at least, I would say, a good 40 to 50 hours. I mean,
you interviewed 32 people at places that don't like me.
No, I didn't. I started off with doing the story that you gave me. I went out and looked at that story. I decided that story wasn't a story. That you had strung together a series of conspiracies. I understood why, Bill Colbert had ticked you off. That was pretty clear. And again, that was in the story. I also understood that your concerns about Hughes, but frankly, that was 4 years ago, and you had kind of patted Hughes on the back, so it seemed like kind of sour grapes to then turn around and say, oh, you're not here for me now. not sure where I'm going after that.
Okay. Well, look, and again,
I got up ahead of steam and I lost it.
I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you because I'm responding to the story that was written about me. But I don't want you to feel like your character is being attacked.
I don't.
Okay, good. We're on the right place there. You characterize Johnny Ritchie as a fellow promoter. When did he get his license?
My understanding, he was a promoter.
Never been a licensed promoter. Johnny Ritchie finds other people, and I've told you this story several times. He finds other people to finance what he does. Johnny Ritchie has never spent a dime of his own money. Yet he criticizes me that I don't pay the fighters jack. Johnny's never paid a fighter jack either. So it's really easy to spend other people's money and be very generous with that. How many of those guys are still around? They're not. They've come and gone. Johnny Ritchie has run 3 or 4 people out of business. And so, again, you gave him the authority as a fellow promoter, and I told you.
I gave him the authority as somebody who worked with you for a number of years and was very close to him, was your best friend, and with whom you fell out, and he subsequently moved on. Now, you told me that he had arranged that there was some kind of thing with Throwdown, and that's why he stormed out, and there was a big drama about it. As there is in this entire story, it's full of endless dramas in teapots, and I think that's part of my problem, is sort of like, how do you kind of nail down the truth such as it is with all this? And so at the end of the day, I just tried to sew it together as I came to understand it after 3 months on and off of working on this story. I am sorry that you felt so angry about it. I certainly didn't intend, and I honestly didn't really think when I looked at it the last time, I felt it was fair. It kind of reflected all the different arguments that I had encountered.
When you say fair, in fact, you sent me an email the day before, said that the story was fair and balanced, and I'm just wondering where the balanced part is, because I'm the only guy that got filleted. I'm the only one that got lambasted. I don't hear anybody else getting anything negative said about them at all.
Well, because it became a story about you, so.
And in fairness, when you call me a tempestuous and bridge-burning individual, or have the tempestuous and bridge-burning attitude, there are people that have worked for me or been friends of mine, and the first thing they did when they left my employer, they went to the opposition. They went to the other side. They went and signed up with the other team. They burned that bridge, not me. I mean, you have to know doing that you're going to.
Sure. I think when I read that lawsuit involving that Jeremy Horn and Throwdown had they filed against you, that complaint. And when I was reading through the affidavits from the different fighters, when I saw the number of fighters and who the fighters were, not that I would profess to have any real knowledge, I did kind of get that sense of sort of they felt at least that bridges have been burned. And it was, again, a phrase that came up constantly in the interviews that I made, whether it were, across the range of this community.
I am curious, Stephen, of names and numbers and references that Mike gave you, or maybe names you found yourself that were involved kind of in the story as resources. Was the consensus that everyone was against Mike?
No, I don't think so. And I found, Hank Wise to be a particularly sort of well-balanced, neutral perspective on...
He is Switzerland.
That he was top of your list in terms of the people you recommended. And I think he sort of nailed a lot of the things down that I felt were important to sort of understanding who Mike is and sort of how he got where he is.
When you... I kind of got painted as a bad guy for having non-compete agreements with people. And Horn and Jennifer Howe. Does City Weekly have a non-compete agreement with you?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the
question. Does City Weekly have a non-compete agreement with you?
If you leave City Weekly, can
you go work for In Magazine?
Another weekly news company? Or
yes. Well, if I leave, I'm a free agent.
Well, I can tell you that most of the personalities in this radio group here can't go just work for the opposition without at least a grace period, particularly when you're in positions of management and those types of things. So it's not an uncommon practice, and especially in the fight world. And I kind of explained this to you, and I thought I had at least adequately done so. But Strikeforce is a great example. They just got purchased by the UFC, and they didn't get purchased because they're a great organization. They got purchased because they had great fighters under contract. And in fact, the UFC swallowed them up. They're going to take the fighters out of there, and they're going to throw Strikeforce by the wayside. And that's it's kind of the part of the business. And that's how the business is run, that you get fighters under contract, and that you as an organization grow as a result of those people being part of your organization.
Well, reading the minutes of the Pete Suazo commission meeting where that came up, again, it seemed that not everybody held that view. And indeed, the lawsuits
well, in fact, their lawsuit was thrown out. So I mean, it wasn't.
How was it thrown out? If the judge rules that
they sued
unrestrained,
me, claiming that I had damaged their ability to do business, and they threw out their claim. He did rule, though, that I had a claim against Throwdown because Johnny Ritchie did have a non-compete agreement with me, and Johnny Ritchie did have an employer-employee relationship with me. The judge said, look, if fighters have got 1 or 2 fights with you, you've not developed a relationship with them that would be qualified as an employer-employee. But guys that have been around a while, that's not necessarily the case, and we can take a look at those on a case-by-case basis. I just didn't have the money to pursue it, and I just said, look, man, enough is enough, and let's move on. So their case, they're the ones who sued me. Their case got thrown out.
Well, as I say, when I read the court file, it said that the judge had ruled that it was a restraint against trade and that the contracts were not enforceable, and that contradicted what you had told me. But then you'd also said, as you said just now, that you didn't have the money to enforce it anyway, which kind of made it a moot point. So
yeah, it did. Let's talk about Charlie Kent for a minute. Now, Charlie Kent, it seemed as though you describe him as somebody that's not a fan of mine.
That was the impression he gave me,
and I just want to be clear. This is the same Charlie Kent that the West Valley City police officer, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this is a guy, and this is not a question for you. This is a statement on my own. This is a guy that I let train at my gym for a year for free because he was a cop, and then went over to Haterville over at Horn's place and decided, for whatever reason, it seems, I've never gotten this sense when I've seen Charlie. Charlie's been very cordial with me every time I've seen him, but now, it would seem that
I can tell you why he was, my understanding that he was negative towards you was that he went into a fight and found himself facing somebody who was tattooed up with gang signs and who actually had an outstanding warrant, and he felt that you had set him up and that it was actually kind of your rather dark sense of humor that a cop would go up against a guy with outstanding warrants, and that I think is what upset him.
That's pretty silly, to be honest with you. And people give me far more credit than I deserve. But Charlie,
do you remember the fight?
I don't, and it would have to have been one of 2 people. I think it would have been probably Tommy Gunn Wagner. Pardon me? Got to take a break?
Time.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about more Charlie Kent when we come back.